Subscribe to the channel for more tales like these.
My boyfriend attempted to kill me last year. So I was in a, well, toxic relationship to put it lightly. My boyfriend was an extremely controlling and abusive person, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Anything bad you can imagine him doing, he did. And, of course, he came from money, so I was very vulnerable since I was living with him and relied on him for shelter while he dragged me across the country. With that aside, we were together for 3 years and lived in 3 different states semi-permanently. However, we were known for traveling across the country between homes. We resided in Phoenix the past year and a half, thousands of miles from anyone I knew or loved, so I had to quietly take his abuses, which were escalating, where in the beginning he would shove me or say mean things to me, but it eventually came to him breaking my bones and causing massive hemorrhages on an almost daily basis. I was constantly covered in bruises, so I would wear long clothes, despite it being triple digits in the summertime. It was a long time coming before it came to a grinding halt. But oh, how it did. We were moving from the city to the country in the valley, and I knew deep down that I might not make it through the stresses that come with selling our home and moving to an even more remote location. One day on our move it was especially stressful. Given our dog ran away earlier that day, we found him, of course, but somewhat off topic. Once we found our dog, we drove back from the new house to our old one, and I was getting us some food from the Wendy's next door. He had been agitated all morning, but once we got to the house I tripped on the concrete driveway and spilled his drink all over the floor. And this was what changed my life forever. He dragged me into the house and proceeded to throw this metal shoe rack over my head and repeatedly beat me with it. Then he found a metal rod belonging to another clothes rack we had, and eventually he resorted to using a crowbar to strike me in the head, the back, and wherever else he could until I was bleeding from my head and couldn't stop. I couldn't breathe due to him puncturing my lung, and several bones were broken. I was actively dying and couldn't walk but a few feet before collapsing. However, it would not be until 20 hours after the incident where I would get medical attention. It was an accident that I survived really because he continued to force me to move furniture despite having a broken back, fractured in 3 places, and what saved me was a pit stop to Circle K on my way to renew our U-Haul lease. Good Samaritan noticed that as I walked in to get a Pedialyte that I collapsed on the floor and looked pale as a ghost despite the extreme temperatures and sun of Arizona, and naturally called an ambulance. Despite having lied to the police many times about my injuries before, I hadn't the energy to do it anymore and told them who he was and where we lived. Naturally, he went to jail and I was in a semi-critical condition for the majority of my week's stay at the hospital. We were both released the same day, and against the conditions of his release he contacted me, at first threatening me, then attempting to bribe me with money to call off the case, otherwise he would kill himself. Many of my friends don't know why I didn't take the money, but I chose not to engage with him further because I knew there wasn't much in my hands at that point anyway, and I didn't trust him anymore and felt if I engaged with him further I would die. And, as he promised, he killed himself by shooting himself in the head, with the gun I bought, may I add. This was the day before Thanksgiving last year. I am since living with family and picking up the pieces of my broken life, but I think about this every day. This affects everything I do and how I see the world. I've committed myself to being a nihilist because I know the world is a cruel, unjust place. The fucked up part is I never stopped loving him and I miss him all the time. But I'm glad it's over, I guess. Top comments. First. No offense, but after reading all that, I'm glad he killed himself. A lot of pieces of shit would save us the trouble if they all did that without taking the innocent people around them with them, their abuse victims, the people they massacre in mass shootings. I don't care if I get downvoted, that guy was a total fucking piece of shit. Good riddance. Edit, it should go without saying, but I should specifically add, I'm glad you lived. We're usually left with the abusers in these situations. Glad to see it's the victim who survived this time. Second. It is so much easier when the trash just takes itself out. OP, I am so sorry you suffered so much abuse at his hands. If you're up to it, you may be able to sue his estate for the pain and suffering you endured from his abuse. I wish you the best in your recovery. Subscribe.